All right, back here on the Newsfeed PM. This afternoon, we're taking stock really of South Africa's leadership and accountability in the year that was, 2025, and we assess the performance of cabinet ministers, examine how political parties fared this year, and reflect on the role played by civic organizations. We'll look ahead also to 2026, exploring some of their expectations and hearing directly from civil society on what government officials, in particular in this year, should place as priority. I'm joined by Wayne Divenage from OUTA, human rights and social justice activist, Mark Haywood, as well as Dennis Bloom, speaking for Activists and Citizens Forum. Gentlemen, good to have you, and thank you very much for your time on this Sunday, for coming on. I mean, it has been a year of events, Wayne. I mean, we are still talking infrastructure backlogs. We are still talking governance issues in particular departments. We are still talking dodgy appointments in some departments. We are still, even though this is all done through the glance of government of national unity. So how has your work as civil society been? Has it been any easier in a GNU lens that is looking at how these departments are operating?
Yeah, hi, thanks, Toby. Nice to be with you today, and with Dennis and Mark. Look, as far as we're concerned, it hasn't got any better. Civil society are still the guardians of accountability, forcing government to take stock of situations, having to stop using the rule of law, a number of things that have gone wrong. I mean, just last year, finally we put to bed the whole car power ships deal. That was a 240 billion rand gas to power project we'd never needed. Load shedding's gone. And yet, a couple of years ago, government was still adamant that they wanted this. A few years prior to that, the nuclear deal was put set aside by civil society. We never needed that as well. So those are just two examples. There are hundreds out there.
But having said that, would you say the Minister of Electricity has done well?
Yeah, I think Eskom is coming right. So they are going to be, and we've got to be very careful that we're not just the naysayers and the doomsayers and we see everything through a negative lens. There are some good things that have come out of, firstly, the Government of National Unity. If we didn't have the Government of National Unity, I can tell you we'd be sitting here today with a 17%, 2% VAT hike, 17% VAT. It was through the fighting that took place in the Government of National Unity, because if we had a majority ANC government, we would be paying more in VAT. They were sent back to the drawing board, and lo and behold, in the mid-term budget policy statements, we saw that they actually found the money that they needed, and they didn't need that fund in the first place. So there's a little bit of a greater introspection taking place. And we had a reasonably good G20, and a couple of good things. The ratings agencies are looking more favorably at us. But that's after 20 years of downgrades. That's after self-inflicted pain. So we're coming off a very, very low base. We shouldn't be here. We are punching so well below our weight as a country. We should be performing much better than we are, with 4 to 5% GDP growth every year on year. And here we get excited when we've got a 1.3% projected growth. So, we've got to keep the pressure up as civil society. It is not getting any better when we see Buti Manamela reappointing people with, to positions in higher education that have got governance concerns, corruption, maladministration, Auditor General findings and qualified audits, and yet they look away when they've got an ideal opportunity to change and fix things. So these are all the signs that we're not seizing the opportunities to introduce a meaningful change in this country.
That Bloom, it's the year of commissions and ad hoc committees. They say General Ntantla Mkhwanazi, he opened the Pandora box and skeletons started flying all over. I mean, did you look at that year and think, well, civil society still has a role to play here?
Compliments of the new season, Thabo,
and all the best to you.
And to Wayne and everybody in the country. We have said from day one, when President Cyril Ramaphosa announced this commission, the Matlanga Commission, we have said it's a delaying tactic. Nothing will come out of that thing. And I can tell you, if civil society is not there, really nothing will come out of it. We are there as civil society to keep the government in check. if we are not standing up against this whole thing, we know what has happened. I was in the studio with the Zondo Commission's report. Yeah. Nothing, not a single one of these criminals, these crooks, are in orange uniform. Now, we are saying that civil society is having a very big role in keeping the government up to scratch. We are not going to back down. We are going to tell them that this is not what our forefathers have struggled for. We are going to fight up until everything is in place. We can't leave it and say that no, President Cyril Ramaphosa is doing the right thing. The country is worse now under him than it was under President Jacob Zuma.
Why so?
Because he has promised that he will tackle and wipe out corruption. Yeah. But as we can see now, corruption is worse in his government. Many of his cabinet ministers are involved in this corruption.
Yeah. Even with all other parties involved, DA and so on and so forth in the GNU.
That GNU was a sellout position. That GNU was just jobs for pals. As we can see, I mean, a party like PAC, I am very, very surprised with the PAC stand. PAC was an upright party who was fighting for the land. They are sitting there also chowing now with the very same corrupt people. Yeah. And they are saying that no, they will bring back the land. They will never, because they have tasted power now. That GNU will never get this country right. Sure. We can forget about it. It is not a GNU. President Nelson Mandela's GNU was a GNU, not this one. This one is just, no, we are going to, I mean, the DA is satisfied. You see how big is Steenhuisen now. He's eating very nice. He's not worried anymore about talking. They were in effective opposition at that time. Yeah. We must say it. But now, no, even corruption, they agree with each and everything. Yeah. They have made. Well,
they've realized it's maybe harder to speak when you're within the operation than it is when you're outside of the operation. But Mark, I mean, talk to me about how you feel about the speed, for example, of you raising the issue of Amapanyaza to when you began to actually see action being taken around this particular matter, in how the system responds to civil society.
Good afternoon, Thabo, and greetings and Happy New Year to you as well. Thabo, I think that's the problem, is that government takes decisions and is unable to implement them quickly. They make mistakes, corruption is revealed, it takes years sometimes to address it and fix it. You get something like the Amapanyaza, as you've just mentioned, which, you know, I first exposed its unlawful establishment by Premier Panyaza Lesufi. The public protector 2 years later confirms that it was illegally established, and Panyaza Lesufi claims it as a victory, as a vindication of himself, strangely enough. But then nothing happens. There's no forensic investigation into the billions of rands the Gauteng government allocated to the Amapanyaza, and there seems to be very little further monitoring and oversight of what is going on there. But Thabo, I wanted to take a slightly different tack to my two colleagues, not to disagree with them, but to put the emphasis slightly differently, which is that I think we can say at the end of 2025 that there was actually a degree of stability achieved in politics, that we've begun to see green shoots in economic data and figures suggesting certain economic improvements. You yourself have mentioned the success of bringing an end to load shedding. And I think we must give credit where credit is due to government. But you know, what really concerns me, and I think concerns a lot of civil society, is that whilst we might be able to say, well, the GNU are all sitting around the table and they're all being pally-pally and there's economic improvement, almost nothing has been done to improve the social conditions in which the overwhelming majority of people in our country live. And I think that's where we have to start to focus, and focus on a sustained basis. We marked at the end of last year gender-based violence and the crisis of femicide in our country. Are we now going to forget about that until next November, or until the next gross incident of murder or abuse?
Yeah.
We have widespread hunger in the country, 11,000 kids a year dying of malnutrition. Our public healthcare systems are in a very, very dire strait, and a large part of it is getting worse by the day. So what I'm saying is that you have to measure improvements in politics and economics, not just by data and the fact that politicians are prepared to talk to each other, but by the lived realities of the majority of people in our country. And the sad thing is that those lived realities are not improving. And that's where we need to be looking. Yeah. And that's where, I'm not saying exclusively, I'm not saying we shouldn't deal with corruption, we shouldn't deal with issues Wayne and Dennis and so on have raised, but we have got to improve people's lives.
We'll look at that in terms of what is the priority then for 2026, if we are really to improve significantly the lives of the people in South Africa. Let's take a break. Civil society groups still with us out. We have with us Mark Haywood as well as Dennis Bloom, and we'll get a sense of what should be prioritized in 2026 and going forward. Stay with us. Live with you on the Newsfeed PM, and thanks for staying on. Wayne Divenage, Dennis Bloom, as well as Mark Haywood. They are in conversation with us on the year that was, taking stock, South Africa's leadership, and some of the formations that would have taken place, but also the performance of the various departments. Wayne, let's talk about these appointments, right? You've already mentioned appointments at CETAs. We were dealing with appointments at social development. We are also now dealing with appointments to key institutions like the NPA. 2026 is the year, I suppose, when the president is going to make that decision. There are some who are saying there are some on that list that should not have been shortlisted. Yeah. They're taking him to court. We don't know how far that particular matter is going to go. But these are lawyers, of course. But what is civil society saying about these appointments to key spaces?
Well, it comes down to the criminal justice system, which is flawed grossly. We've seen that at the Madlanga Commission and other commissions that are taking place, the Kabinda Commission, an inquiry, and clear to us is that if we don't fix the criminal justice system, if we don't get on top of corruption, then more people will slip into poverty than out of poverty. And that's what's happening, sadly. And as Mark says, we have to deal with these things. More kids are leaving school unemployable because our education system has collapsed. Literally, when we are happy with a 30% pass rate and we fight for it, it's crazy. So all these indications are a leadership, a void in the leadership space around what are we going to do to uplift and get South Africa's prosperity unlocked. And going back to the appointments, look, we've seen after Sean Abrams, Shamila Batoy's come along and tried in a very constrained environment that is lacking resources and is obviously compromised to try and fix things. But it's more than that. It's the systems, it's the courts. You try and get a case into court now 3 years later, and I don't have to tell you what justice delayed, what it does, and the poor suffer the most under those conditions. And that's why civil society has to fight even harder to get professional appointments. What we'd like to see in the new year, you know, we've got the Public Administration Management or Management Administration Amendment Bill that, you know, to professionalize public administration. That all of those appointments in the Municipal Amendments Act, in whistleblowers amendments and bills that have to be passed to protect whistleblowers, to make them feel safe to come forward. All of this stuff culminates in a criminal justice system that hopefully starts to become professionalized with good appointments. So there again, we're going to be looking for an appointment of a new commissioner of police, possibly a minister of police. Lots to happen there with Shamila's appointment. And if we get all of this right and we give them the resources, but also stop the political interference, we may start moving in the right direction. If we don't fix that, we're never going to get on top of systemic corruption, the criminal syndicates which have infiltrated everywhere. We lose so much money to alcohol, illicit trade, tobacco illicit trade, all imports that are coming in under the radar screen. Billions is lost. It all just adds up to a state that is boxing, as I said, well below its weight. Our prosperity levels should be well above where they are, but we have a leadership that does not have the political will to address all of these things. We have to see how the president acts in this regard with these appointments in the new year.
I mean, you come from a political background, even though you are in civil society now, and we are in a year where local government elections are going to really dominate the space. And you've already said you don't think it's genuine, the government of national unity. But what I can almost bet my last dollar on, I don't have, but if I did, right, would be the fact that coalition is the future. So we're going to see more local government unity structures or coalitions, GNUs at municipal level.
You see, Thabo, in 1994, that was the biggest mistake that the ANC government have made, to politicize local government. Local government is supposed to be on the ground, grassroots people. Now, this government of national unity in local government, in councils, it's where the problem starts, because these people are accountable to political parties, and the political parties are making decisions. If Dennis Bloem is elected to go into a council under the banner of, say, PAC or whatever party, Dennis Bloem is not accountable to the people on the ground. That is a very serious mistake, because people can't do anything. People are crying on the ground. People are sitting without water. People are sitting without electricity. People are sitting with potholes, sewage and what. But when they go to a councillor, the councillor will say, I will consult my political party to attend to this. This person is not accountable to the people that have elected them. Right. Now, that is a very serious mistake. In the first place, we must change the electoral system. People, the mayor must be elected by the people themselves. The premier must be elected by the people on the ground, even the president themselves. But with this government of provincial government, or these coalitions in municipalities, we are going nowhere. We will see a repeat of things. But if people go in there as independents, they will represent the people who have elected them, and not the political party. At the present moment, they represent the political party. Yeah. That is a very serious mistake, the biggest mistake that the ANC have done in 1994.
Mark, as you wrap us up, I mean, should we be looking to more commissions, maybe more focused on improving the standards of living and living conditions of people more than it is about these commissions about who paid whose accommodation and so on and so forth, in what bag, from which retailer?
Thabo, no, I don't think we should be looking to more commissions. I think we know what the causes of hunger and malnutrition are in our country, and I think that we have the powers to address it. We don't have the political will to address it. That is why people remain hungry. I think that we know what the problems are in the public healthcare system. More importantly, we know what measures and steps would rapidly improve the quality of healthcare services if we were listening to the front care healthcare workers, the doctors, the nurses, the people who in the system. In fact, the last thing that we need is commissions to deal with these many aspects of the social crisis. What we need is resources. We need an end to austerity financing, for example, in health and in relation to basic education. And we need concrete plans which are monitorable, measurable, and to which there is real degree of commitment. Yeah. That is what has got to happen. It needs the same level of political prioritization as the economy gets, or as corruption gets. And I would also just agree with Dennis. You know, we have on this, that we have 12 months possibly to the next local government election. That gives we, the people in our communities, time to start preparing, time to start identifying what our local community issues are, who are the champions in our communities, and going out and talking in our communities and preparing independent candidates to run our councils. Because it may seem a strange thing to say, but I think this is what Dennis was saying, is that we could do with political parties getting out of local government and honest, ordinary people getting into local government to fix communities.
So are you saying, I mean, civil society should stay clear of the national dialogue? I mean, that's possibly what we're going to have to deal with.
Well, we do need dialogue. There's no question that we need dialogue. But you know, civil society has been talking about these issues that I'm talking about for years and years and years. We don't need a dialogue about the food crisis to end child malnutrition. If tomorrow morning President Ramaphosa said, I am going to pass regulations to control the price of a basket of essential foodstuffs needed by infant children to prevent malnutrition, we could probably impact on millions of children immediately by doing so. If tomorrow President Ramaphosa said, I'm going to find money for a maternal support grant to support pregnant women and to ensure there's a smooth transition from pregnancy to the child support grant for poor families, we would benefit millions and millions of people. That's what we need to be doing. We do need to dialogue, Thabo. We do need to talk to each other. We do need to have these conversations. But these conversations should not be a cause of further delay or a cause of further massive expenditure in addressing the day-to-day problems that people in our communities are living with as you and I are having this conversation now.
Let's leave it there. Much appreciated. Gentlemen, time always the enemy, but appreciate your time. Thank you for coming. And that's Dennis Bloem, spokesperson for Activists and Citizens Forum, Wayne Duvenage of Outer, and human rights and social justice activist Mark Haywood.